What's up, guys? This is Danny Hoefelmann. I'm the host of this podcast, The Good in Today, where I believe that no matter what's going on in your day, there is some good in it. Today, I had the awesome opportunity to have on Lindsey Schwartz. And if you haven't heard of her yet, you will. But she runs the Powerhouse Women movement. And basically, about 3 years ago, she decided she was going to write a book. 2 years ago, she released that book. It was called Powerhouse Women. And since then, it has literally changed the trajectory of her life. And a majority of what she does right now is basically living with the purpose of empowering women to see the potential that they already have within themselves. And she helps with everything from being a happier person to being more confident, having more fun in your life. Those are all areas that we talked about today. So I'm grateful for her and grateful for the time I got to spend with her. Grateful for you guys for listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode. I feel like I'm Ron Burgundy in this just because I'm like smiling and laughing. So yeah, we'll just go with that.
This is our intro. Here we are.
This is the intro. I'm sitting down today with Lindsey Schwartz, and thank you for stopping in.
I'm so excited to be here.
This like already starts off on the way that it's just kind of a running joke that you're just like the ball of positivity that comes into our office once in a while.
Oh wait, this is like a conversation behind the scenes?
No, this is going. We're going now. Like
no, that conversation about that's what people say about me
no,
when
this
I'm not
is just
here.
like anytime you're not here and I talk with them, like that's just Lindsey is like the ball of positivity. So that's just a known thing here.
Did I ever tell you that someone once told me instead of resting B face, I have resting joyful face?
I wish people said that about me because I am quite the first one. And like that's a known thing.
Apparently, I took it as a compliment.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So a little bit of background on Lindsey for those that don't know who she is. She is a author. She is as of recently, a new and noteworthy podcast host on iTunes. Congratulations there. So she runs the Powerhouse Women podcast, and she's the one behind I'm just going to call it the Powerhouse Women movement.
It is.
So, yeah. I don't know. I flubbed what I was going to say. Anyway, you want to just give a little better background on like who you actually are and like how you've gotten where you are for now?
Well, gosh, what do I want to say about that?
I don't know, because I might cut you off if you go long because I did a bad job of asking you a specific thing. I left that very broad.
No, that's great. I won't go into the whole thing. Actually, what you asked is perfect. Who I am a normal human being. And it's very interesting seeing as this movement has started and as like the well-known factor, which I'm not well-known at all. Like I have a very small audience, if you will. But even yesterday I was at my chiropractor's office and a girl came up and she's like, "Oh my God, I listened to your podcast," like starstruck. And I was like, I'm like so normal. This is so weird to me. So I think I still have trouble with that. I feel like I am truly following my calling on this planet, and it comes with people sort of like knowing who I am in that way. But it also has me, I think, realize how much I put other people on pedestals.
Yes.
Even Beyonce is a human being.
All freaking do that.
Yeah, we totally do. So it's a very interesting part that has come along with. So that's what I want to preface it by saying is I'm like so unimpressive in my normal life. Very introverted, very socially awkward at times, and yet I've built a business on showing women that you don't have to have it all together in order to get started in pursuing a big idea, pursuing a big dream. I joke with my girlfriends, I am not the friend. I've told you this too. I'm not the friend to tell.
That's part of the reason this is running right now.
You have a big idea that you're really excited about. Don't tell me that idea unless you want to be held accountable to it. And this has all really just taken off in the last 3 years. So it started with the book Powerhouse Women, and then it really expanded far beyond what I ever imagined it would be to an annual event. And we're doing some cool stuff. There's more to come, but right now people know it as really the annual event. We have an online community, and then more to come. The podcast, of course.
The podcast.
And et cetera, et cetera.
So I'm glad you went kind of where you went in the beginning, because I don't know. I know I've done a lot of like heavy conversations on this podcast so far. And like, if this happened to find something where it became heavy, like whatever, but I'm excited to have you on here just because I want to talk more tactical. Because what I want to do with this podcast more so moving forward is still have those conversations that I think are really important. Those won't stop, but I want to be able to bring on some people that can say, if you're stuck at this point in your life, here are some tactical things you can do to
Yeah.
move forward and find like whatever the next point in your life is. That's something that I think you do really well. And I think it does come down to you having that attitude of, if you tell me your big dream or like your big idea, like be prepared for me to like put some freaking pressure on
It was
it.
almost an evil laugh.
Well, it's funny because legitimately you were one of the people who like, you started recording here and then I started laughing because I'm like, you were banking episodes so you could do like an actual launch strategy and all these things. And it was just like, I was talking to you for weeks, if not a couple months, and you knew about mine, and you were one of probably 5 women who I talk with on a weekly basis that were like, what about yours? Like, you're helping with mine. What about yours? Like, what are you doing? And it was like, okay. And then I basically got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm going to launch before hers. Like, I'm going to like go because you were waiting. And it was like, all right, I'm going to beat you. But you're doing 2 a week. Although by the time this airs, I will be daily. So
Amazing.
So that's
Yep.
one thing that's going to be changing on this is we are going to start doing a good news story every day, 3 to 10 minutes. And like, that's
Love
just
that.
going to be the actual like good in today. And then we'll still do these on top of it. So
Yep.
all said and done, there should be like 8 episodes a week going out. So
Wow.
that only happens if me and my wife are like working really well as a team. So I totally lost where I was going with it. But anyway, I appreciate that you're the kind of person who, if someone tells you their goals, you never laugh at them. You never tell them like that's too big or that's out of reach. It's like, okay, what does it take?
Yep.
Like, have you always been that way?
Oh God, no. And part of it is I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I always wanted someone else to tell me the plan. I wanted to have the security. I wanted to know exactly what I was doing and have the plan A to Z and know it backward and forward. Especially just know that it was going to be successful before I'd ever take a risk and try something. And it came through, doing a little bit of that. I went to work for someone else and I was in a job that I didn't love. Meanwhile, started doing a lot of personal development. And that's, I think, where my mindset and anything that I've created in terms of
How long
quote-unquote
ago was
success.
this that you started to bring on personal development?
So I really dove in it was more than 10 years ago now. Truthfully, this is actually kind of a funny story. How I got hooked on personal development was in college, like my long-term relationship, it was like very up and down. So it was one of the breakups. There were many. And I remember just feeling like a crazy person. When things happen in life and we don't understand it or the bottom drops out in a situation where we thought, I thought this person was like my forever. Now it's laughable because I have the best husband on the planet, but
It worked out.
it worked out fine. But at the time, when you're in that relationship and you think like, oh, this is the one, and then it is definitely not the one, I was just searching for something to help me understand my emotions and the roller coaster that I was on. I felt like a legitimate crazy person and found honestly, like the first thing that was even somewhat personal development was like Dr. Phil. I was like
Nice.
reading Dr. Phil relationship books, which kind of led one thing to another. I think I stumbled upon The Secret, which I was never that huge like into that whole thing, but it led me to find people like Jack Canfield and other authors who were talking about things like taking responsibility for your life and really working on your mindset. So in the grand scheme of that whole journey, I started to hear these stories about people who got paid a lot of money to do what they genuinely loved. Now, this was a radical conversation because I grew up in the Midwest and there's really no conversations outside of, you go to work, you get a good job, you have benefits, and actually that's like a great living. There's nothing wrong with that living. But this conversation of what would I love to do for a living and I could have a significant income or just make a good life for myself in doing that, not to mention help a lot of people. I started to just entertain that maybe there was more for me. And it actually took a few years for that seed to develop and for me to really wake up to the fact that maybe there was more for me. But it was planted back when I just started hearing these stories of people who were making this kind of a life for themselves. And that was the first time I really ever saw that kind of example in my entire life.
Who are some of your favorite authors that you found through the years? Not necessarily just back then, but like,
Yeah.
who are some of the people that have inspired you?
So the two authors I love and people who've inspired me are probably two different things just because a lot of it, and I think you get this too, certain books resonated with me at different points of my journey.
Very much so.
One of the first books, I'll talk about this, the first book that I read that was, I would consider personal development, it was called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Good book.
Great book. I was using it to try to get like this ex of mine back. Not the best reason to use it. Again, I laugh at this now. It's so hilarious. But it actually taught me a little bit about how to influence people, which how to influence people does not matter what you do for a living. That is one of the highest paid skills.
Yes.
How to have influence. So I loved that book. And then, gosh, just people who have inspired me most. Again, it's been such different parts of my journey, but it's interesting how, and maybe this is part of how I see the good in today. Do you like how I tied that in there?
I like that.
You're
I appreciate
welcome.
that.
You're welcome. Is I truly believe that life is working for me. That things aren't happening to me, things are happening for me. And it's like when I'm ready for the next lesson, the teacher appears. And the person who I need to learn that lesson from appears. And when I choose to see it that way, that's typically what I find.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. And that is a great book. Like it's something that, it's one of the first ones that I was originally introduced to also. I think the first real piece of personal development that ever came to me was I was a part of an MLM at the time. And like one thing that I will give total credit to MLMs is a lot of them have really good trainings in terms of like mindset and coaching. And like that's something they're great at.
Yeah.
So whether you take it and run with it or not, that's
agree.
really there. But I had a coach that I worked with, and his first personal development book was The Magic of Thinking Big. So that was just like his thing. And because he was the guy I looked up to, I was like, all right, I'm going to find that book.
Yep.
And I started reading it, and it was one of the first times that I'd ever, like, my family's from the Midwest. I grew up in small town Utah. Everyone in, like, I don't know, not many people in my direct family just think really big, if I can just say it that way. And that was one of the first things where he started making these little tweaks to your mindset of, like, well, I could have the job that paid that much. I basically just have to believe that I'm worth it and ask for it.
Right.
And before, like, you just wouldn't even assume that you could. Like, you're just, I don't know. I look back on my time, and I worked in a factory, and I never wanted to get out of the factory.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be one of the top people at the factory. I didn't even want to be the top guy. I just want to be one of the top people because that would be enough.
Middle management. Fine. That's great.
Yeah, and I was like, that'll be fine.
Totally.
Like, that was how my brain worked, and it moved from there to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where he talks about, like, don't climb the ladder, own the freaking ladder. And it was like, like, all right, I start to get it. So that's like, I don't know. Personal development is something that I drive my wife nuts because my memory and my brain is not presently amazing. But with things like that, like my brain is a freaking trap. Like I can tell you who said what on what podcast that I listened to 2 years ago. Those things stick for me. But it was also one of the things that helped me realize, like, this is something I actually have a freaking passion for.
Totally.
That's where, like, I've wanted a podcast for 5 years, never thought I could or would ever be able to do it. Like, it wasn't one of those things.
And look at you now.
Now we are here. But it was just, I don't know. Personal development is something that I think so many people, if they're going through hard things and if they're trying to figure out what to do, I hate that so many people look at them and they're like, well, that's a self-help book. Like, that's dumb. And I'm like, no, it's look at all the smart rich people. Yeah. That's what they read. Right. You should probably look at that. Like it's not an accident. It happens for a reason.
So true.
So anyway, I went off on a tangent, but with that and you kind of like finding your purpose through that and like as you found that, I think one of the biggest keys to happiness there is trying to figure out what in the world your purpose is. And I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, and you have like, I'll throw it out now and we'll talk about it later too, but like you have a girl gang of people who they're all a part of like a private group.
That's right, people.
She's in a gang.
Yeah,
She's
I'm a leader of a gang. Yeah. We have matching jackets and everything.
There's lots of good photos. So, but one of the things that you help people do is like figure out what their purpose is and like grow. So can you kind of break down a little bit of like how you go about doing that and like how you found your purpose?
Yeah, I think that I was always obsessed with what's the answer? Just give me the answer. Like where do I find the magic lamp with the genie who tells me what my purpose is? And part of that is probably, you know, that upbringing. What's the question we ask kids from kindergarten on? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Yes.
If someone asks me that today as a 35-year-old adult woman, I truly don't know who I want to be in 5 years or 10 years. I love what I'm doing now. But it took me a while. It really took me till this last season, which building Powerhouse Women has only been the last 3 years, really 2 years since the book came out, but I'll count the year I was writing it. And a lot of that process, writing the book and trying to answer exactly what you're asking. Like if someone asked me, how do I find my purpose? What would I even tell them? And the truth is for me, this is like a true test right here of our friendship. Are you familiar with the books, the Choose Your Own Adventure books?
I've heard of them, haven't read them.
Oh, okay. Well, we can still be friends. It's fine.
I've heard of them. I've got to keep me on the scale.
You're there. But those were like my jam when I was a kid. And Choose Your Own Adventure. It's exactly as it sounds. So you're the protagonist in the story, and you'll get to a point where it's like, if you want to go through door 2, flip to page 50. If you want to go through door whatever.
I do remember these now that you're saying that.
And usually it ends like with a T-Rex eating you alive, or like it's very dark. I don't know why anyone let me read that as a child, but I started to realize it was much more like that, meaning the journey to find my purpose was much more like that than it was someone giving me this exact plan, like a treasure map. It was much more of, okay, I'm going to try this. Okay, that wasn't it. I've tried a lot of things that it was not it. That would make a really funny podcast someday. But also leaning into where something really did feel exciting, or part of it for me was starting to give attention to things I was even just curious about. And that was the part I was never willing to do. I was never willing to look silly. I was never willing to put myself out there and risk being judged, being criticized. And it just kept me playing small. So I just did the thing I was comfortable with, which was really freaking uncomfortable because I was unhappy.
Yeah.
And the moment I started stepping into the things that were trying to get my attention all along, that was when the world started to open up. And then when I would take one step and, follow the little path, sometimes it would end with, okay, well, this wasn't it, plot twist, and I would try something else. But it would always redirect me elsewhere, or I would meet a person, or something would be part of the journey that now looking back was all adding up to what I'm doing. But I'm totally unattached that what I'm doing now is ultimately what I'll do until I'm 100.
Well, and it also is one of those things where as you're trying all these other things, whether you're failing at them or just not enjoying them, regardless, you're abandoning them at one point, you're still learning from all of those things. Like you're taking that experience and now I know how to apply that over here. When I run into this here, now I can apply this. You're able to keep moving forward on that.
And I think I think this is the other side of it, is I started to get fascinated by why certain people were passionate about certain things. And it occurred to me that, because one of the biggest blocks for me was always, well, I want to do, let's just use a podcast, for example. I've shared with you, I bought equipment 5-6 years ago to start a podcast that is still collecting dust. I upgraded. I have new equipment now.
Skipped over.
But it never was launched because I was just sure there were already people doing what I wanted to do. And yes, there's a lot of podcasts out there. But I think when we look within and look at what we really feel we are put on this earth to do, and it because it's the thing that you find, I think it's this perfect balance of, you've got some talent for it, you've got a passion for it, but it also is something that, fulfills a deeper desire, a deeper need, the contribution piece. And I don't know where the perfect mix for every single person is, but most of the work that I do is I encourage women to lean in to what they feel right now, just that next little baby step that they feel they're called to take. Because most of us, especially for women, and I'm sure men deal with this too, but we just want to know. We want to know the whole path. But in my experience, we don't have that privilege. We don't get to know exactly where step 1 is going to lead. We just have to trust that when we take step 1, step 2 will be revealed. And when I took the pressure off of myself that I had to know what the whole journey was going to look like, and when I reinforced and I actually listened to, well, what do I feel is missing? And I'm seeing this uniquely, that there's a need, and trust that that little seed of an idea was given to me for a reason, that it's not about me, it's 100% about who I'm going to serve, that by taking the next step toward that, step 2 would be revealed, and then step 3 and step 4. And that is exactly how this journey has unfolded. And that's why if you ask me where I'm going to be in 5 years, I have no idea. And I'm not going to try to figure that out, because if I tried to figure it out now, I would be looking from the lens of the person I am today. But I'm going to be different a year from now, and then a year after that.
Yeah. That's something that I'm also learning, the same thing. I have goals of things I would like to accomplish in 5 years, but like, will I be in the same state? I have no freaking idea. So many things can happen.
Yeah.
One thing I want to hit on is one of the things you just said was the thing that kind of motivated you to push past the fear was the fact that you knew you were doing it for others, not for you. It wasn't about you. And that's kind of one of my things is really, as I'm figuring out what I want the good in today to be, is essentially there's 3 areas of connection that I want to focus on. And there's connection with yourself. Do you like yourself? Are you someone who is happy with where you are? That kind of stuff. Your connection with your family, your friends, your relationships. And then your connection with a bigger why than you. And I don't know if that means God to someone. I don't know if that means feed starving children in Africa. Whatever that bigger why is, how are you connected with it? And I think for you, I've kind of heard you talk about it, but even with what you just said, I know you saying, I was scared to do this, but I knew it would serve these people. Yeah. That was worth doing it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I realized how much when I was in my fear and thinking about what if people judge me? What if they don't like it? What if that random person on the internet has an opinion about what I'm doing, right? It's never the people who I actually care about their opinions. That's what'll pop into my mind. What if this random person doesn't like what I'm doing? That was all about me. That was how I was going to feel and how I was going to look. It had nothing to do with others. And there was a point where I actually had, writing the book was very, very therapeutic. And during the writing process, there's actually parts that I have this relationship that I channeled it from somewhere else because I didn't know to say that. And I think a lot of the messages in the book, that's going to make me sound real woo-woo, but that's the best way I can describe it, right? But the book that came through, the final product, was just as much for me as it was for other women. And because I was writing to a woman who was in a similar place as I was a few years before, it was kind of easy to connect really quickly to who that woman was, what her fears are, what her challenges are. But that was one part that, when I was in a season of writing and even just wrestling with, well, what is this bigger message? The words came out on paper, and it was, this talking about this nudge, when we feel this call to create something, you feeling the call to create the good in today, that it just means that there are people out there collectively who are waiting for someone to create that. Now, it might be you, but it might be someone else, if we don't take that step to create it. And when that kind of came out on the page, and again, I don't even take credit for that. I'm not that smart to write that. But it came out, and it was
just saying.
I mean,
you did.
Maybe I am. Maybe
just
I just
saying.
Maybe it's one of those I blacked out. What happened? But when it came out on the page, and the exact words were, "This is not about you. It's 100% about who you're going to serve." That was all I needed to go back to every time I wanted to quit. Because if it were for me, if any of this were for me, I would have quit a long time ago. I actually really don't like the spotlight. I get very awkward, don't know what to do with my hands. And I wasn't willing enough to get uncomfortable just for my own benefit. But I think a lot of us are wired to want to contribute to other people. So the moment I think about who this could help, or what if I show up and I'm just my awkward self, who would that contribute to? Then it frees me up to just be myself and put content out there, whether or not I'm judging it, and just trust that someone else needed to hear that. And that's why I felt compelled to record that podcast episode or do that Facebook Live, even if on the back end I'm judging myself and thinking my hair looks weird or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of also goes back to that, we all see other people doing things and we put them on pedestals.
Oh, yeah.
And we see them doing this thing and we're but theirs looks so good. Yeah. We can't do it because ours won't look like that.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you realize they're on the other side of the camera being like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
I can't
like
believe.
Nothing is working.
Yeah.
And like, I have grown so much in my 2 years being here at Rensselaer because like I was, and I still do, but like I was very much someone who, when I sat with business owners, and like I used to freaking work with business owners all day, but I was intimidated by them.
Yeah.
Like if I went back to my old job with the attitude I had now, holy crap, it'd be so different.
Be running the place.
But like genuinely, like I wouldn't be scared to sit and talk with people.
Yeah.
Because now I'm at a point where I realize like most business owners are making it up as they go.
Yep.
Most. You know, like there's some who they're big enough that now there's systems and whatever. But even that, almost everyone, like if you look at like the local entrepreneur level, we're all just figuring it out.
Spoiler alert.
And like, okay, let's stop being intimidated by people and just talk to them like humans.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same way with, I've had enough people that like, we host podcasts here. So I see different hosts come in and they're like so worried that theirs doesn't sound like so-and-so. I'm like, yeah, but they're 500 episodes in.
Right.
Go back and listen to episode 1.
Right.
Like, it's okay. Like, everything's good.
Yeah.
So
true.
As you're talking about helping people just kind of see that thing that they're, you know, afraid to do, but they feel called to do, what do you say to them when they say, yeah, but I don't have the confidence to do that? Like, that's just scary. Like, when I'm more confident, like, I'll build confidence first, and then I'll do it. But also, meanwhile, they're not doing anything to build the confidence. Like, how do you help people through that?
Gosh, that's such a good question. And it's really dependent on who the person is. There are certain people. So I also have to balance this personality that I have that I want to fix everyone. So if you want the real answer, I'm like, no, let me help you. Like, here, borrow some of mine. Like, I'll rub it off on you. But I've realized that actually doesn't help them. And it's not healthy emotionally for me either. So it's, I think, part of how we've structured even the business that I'm building with Powerhouse Women is to make sure we have something to meet women wherever they are at. Because, and I don't know that this directly even answers what you were getting at, but I can't help someone who's not willing to help themselves. And I know for me, I thought I wanted more confidence. I thought, there are all these things that I thought were the answer if I just had more confidence. But the truth is, I had to get to a place where I just genuinely liked me. It wasn't confidence I was looking for. It was really freedom. It was freedom just to be myself and be out there, messy, imperfect, and trust that, like, at my core, I still knew who I was and that I was a good person and that it was all going to work out in my favor if I just was willing to put myself out there. So the confidence piece is a little tricky because I don't think you can force it. I think a lot of times confidence is like, well, if I just had that, then I would. But I didn't find any confidence until I started to do this stuff that was scary, that I was so sure. I mean, there were times where I physically felt like I was having a panic attack just at the thought of someone reading my book before it was published. Before the podcast was launched, I had a day where I had physical trauma at the thought of, like, this is now going to put a message out there for more people to see and have an opinion about. But I also now I know that, like, when I feel that sense of fear, dread, self-doubt, and I'm still excited about what's possibly on the other side, it just means that my brain is kind of checking in and going like, are you sure you want to do this? But no matter how many books I read, no matter how many coaches I hired, until I was ready to just face that, I was never going to find confidence. So it's tough. I mean, I have like all the sympathy in the world because I was in my own way for 30 plus years. But it wasn't until I started to do the hard stuff and the uncomfortable stuff that now I do. I have a level of confidence and freedom and just am able to be myself in a way that I didn't know was missing before. I thought I wanted confidence, but I wanted to get to the point where I feel right now.
Actually just learning to, like, not care what people think and just kind of unapologetically be you. Like, I understand we still care what people think.
I was like, I care deeply what people think, actually.
I care very much what people think, but I'm just saying, like, it's more so trying to get to that place of just, like, doesn't matter what they think, just because I know if I do this, like, I'll still feel fulfilled, and, like, that's just what it is.
Yeah. That's been, actually, preview of coming attractions, the next episode I come in here and record is actually about, I had this huge aha about being a people pleaser. May I share?
Please.
because it ties into what you're saying. Because I thought that the antidote was, okay, so if I was feeling not confident, I just need some confidence. That's going to, bam, fix it. If I'm people pleasing, okay, now I just need to not care what people think. And that was stifling because truly at my core, and I think you know this about me, I can't shut it off. I care about people. And part of that is I deeply care about like what they think. And, you know, if something that I would do would upset someone like that, that's going to affect me. So I got to this place where through some just events last year that, you know, it was like this person that had been triggered by me being me, right? My worst fear, so I thought. But it actually brought me to this place where I was like, wow, I tried to do the Lindsey thing, which is I tried to change who I was to make this person comfortable, and it backfired. I mean, it backfired in like a big way. It was pretty intense. And I realized that like the part of me that was like deeply hurt by that, I didn't want to shut that off. Like, even though it's like, you know, I always use the example of being in love. Like, you risk having your heart shattered by putting your heart out there and being willing to, like, love someone. I think it's the same in friendships. It's the same in any relationship. You risk having your expectations not met. Or, like, in this case, it just broke my heart that, like, someone in the world could think I was an awful person. And at the same time, I realized I had no control over that. So instead of feeling like, well, I just need to be now shut off my emotions and not care what this person thinks, I actually sat there and I just honored the fact. I was like, you know what? I'm really hurt by this. Like, I'm really hurt. And at the same time, I know that the part of my heart that's hurt because this happened is the same part that makes me a person who easily connects with people. I just love people. I mean, I'll hug anyone. I'll hug a complete stranger. I should probably have more boundaries. But it gave me a lot of power to claim, and I think this kind of goes back to your first point about the confidence, just to own everything that I am and everything that I'm not, and realize that when I'm in a healthy place with how I'm wired, which is a people pleaser, if you want to like consider it that, the same attributes that make me a people pleaser, where we would see that in a negative light, right? Maybe caring too much what people think, or allowing their opinions, their views to shape what I do or don't do. That's an unhealthy place when I'm in, you know, not in my strength. But when I'm in my strength as a natural connector, I am unstoppable. I mean, that's literally how I've built my business, is because the relationships that I build are genuine. I do love people like deeply, almost to a fault. And so I know that puts me at risk, that I might be disappointed or hurt, or when someone says my podcast sucks, like that's going to hurt a little bit.
Like no one has yet,
but I kind of feel like you haven't made it in life until you have at least one hater.
You have to have a few haters.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's clear, but it really was freeing. The freedom came not in shutting off how much I care what others think, but in almost claiming that, like, yeah, I actually deeply care. I would love for everyone to love me and to make a huge impact. But if I have to choose, I'll choose the impact.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And that's something that I think about a lot, because I don't know, I laugh because as you were talking about being someone who like clammed up and like have these little panic freak out things
all the time.
It's a side tangent for me to like think of, but like the story that popped in my head was even doing this, like when I started doing, I would help out, like, so we're in Rensler Media. I think I say this every freaking podcast too, but like we're in Rensler Studios right now, and we started a podcast with Skylar about 2 years ago, and the first time like I had to go on with him, I was freaking out. We didn't have an audience. It didn't freaking matter. Like people could go back and watch it now.
Yeah.
But I hated speaking. I'm presently working to not care. I'm working to be able to just like, I now recognize if I actually have something to say and I have a message, I can articulate it pretty all right.
Yeah.
Not amazing. I'm not going to sound like a professional public speaker, but I can speak my truth. I'm good at that.
Yep.
And anyway, but it made me think of like, there were times where I had to like talk in church, and I legitimately had to speak in front of, I don't know, 300 to 400 people that day kind of thing, like multiple times. And one of the funniest things to me was I was so scared that like the pulpit is on like a little switch so they can raise up and down kind of thing automatically.
Yeah.
I was gripping the sides and legitimately like shaking.
Oh my.
And I didn't notice until I was like 3/4 the way through just reading my paper, because that was about all I could do at that point, that it started coming back up. Because I had forced it all the way back down, and I had no idea, but I had like been breaking the freaking thing.
Like Hulk smash.
Yeah, like it was just not good. And then they raised it up, and at least that like broke my freak out, because it was like, oh shoot. And I had to laugh for a second, because it was like, I'm breaking the freaking pulpit.
Yeah.
But then like people laughed because I was crying. Like, I'm the type of person who in the past, I cared so much, and I would get so scared and like so anxious that I would literally have tears in my eyes. And people were like, oh, like he feels the spirit. And I was like, no, I am freaking out.
This is not the Lord right now.
This is not what's happening. Like, I am freaking out, and I want to go sit down. But like, it's something that I look at, and it's cool to me now. Mm-hmm. Because if you threw me on a stage in front of 500 people now, I'd probably still freak out.
Yeah. But
I'm a heck of a lot better than I was. Like, I have the ability to at least get up and talk. And like, doing this would freak me out before. Right. Like, the ability to sit down and have a conversation with another human being. Yeah. The only reason it's getting easier is because I'm doing it. Yeah. Exactly what you said. Like, whatever you feel called to do, that big scary thing, when you just start doing it, A, you start to gain the confidence in it. B, you start to actually narrow in on like what your purpose is. Yeah. And like, that's been such a huge thing for me. Yeah.
And I remember even when I was writing the book, it wasn't like I picked up, a pen. No one actually writes books with a pen anymore, but, sat down and started writing the first day and realized like, oh my gosh, I'm this amazing writer. No, I was legit terrible. And there are drafts upon drafts that will never be published, but that was the part I was never willing to press into, the part that I sucked at, in order to get through to the other side, where I started to get better and a little better and a little better. And a lot of it, again, like trying to find my purpose, I was just waiting for it to come and like a little magic wand on my shoulder. And all of a sudden I was like, now ordained to fulfill this purpose. No, it's ugly. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. Most often, if you're going to do really, really big things, you're going to have to press into what's uncomfortable. So, and I know we've had so many conversations too about just you on that path and doing that. So I can't wait to see where it leads for you.
I'm excited. Yeah. Genuinely, I am. Like, it's something where I'm trying to just like not put any expectations on it, but it's one of these things that I just know, by being someone who puts yourself out there, like when we started this company, we were doing video for people, and we started a podcast. And then little did we know, 2 years later, 75% of our business is now doing podcasts for other people. Never freaking saw that coming. Wow. So by just putting stuff out there, like, who knows where it leads. Right. So anyway, it makes
to be continued.
Yeah, to be continued. Check back when I'm still here in 2 years. Like, that's the key to this, is the consistency side of it. Yep. But another thing I wanted to talk with you about is you already said, like, you're kind of the person who, like, you find joy and fulfillment and like business, frankly, out of just being a connector. And you have created a tribe, a girl gang in your instance. But another thing that I think so many people need to actually find happiness is how to find like a group of people to like have community with. Yeah. How do you, like, I know you have events and things like that where you can kind of bring people in, but when someone is sitting in a town and they hear this and they're not here and they can't come like to something specific that we talk about, like, how do you encourage people to get out and start finding a community? Yeah. Well, if you think about it, we're more connected than ever nowadays. Anyone who says that they can't find others who are like-minded or inspire them, that's just an excuse. And that's the tough love part that I'm not great at delivering. But truly, I mean, there's no shortage of opportunity, and it's just a matter of being resourceful. So I know, I think you sat in when I recorded the podcast on this. The first thing I had to do is I had to look in the mirror. What kind of friend, what kind of community did I want to attract? And was I being that? And in some instances, I wasn't. I wasn't always the one looking on the bright side of things or looking for solutions. It's not like challenges won't come, or, that's part of the reason why having a community is important for when, what hits the fan. But was I being resourceful? Was I genuinely showing up for people before I asked them to show up for me? And I had to like really look hard in the mirror,
And there were some things that I changed as a result. So I think first of all, it's getting clear, like, who do you want to surround yourself with? And I talk with a lot of women who feel like they're ready to transcend maybe the group that they've been surrounded by their whole life. Not to say that we leave those people behind. I still have great friendships with people I don't talk to very often, but people from my past who don't even really ask what I'm doing now with this new business. Our friendship is based on other things. But if you're looking for the kind of community that's going to seriously support you to level up, you have to look in the mirror first and ask yourself, am I being those characteristics? Am I being those qualities? And then start to look for those people. Where do you see people who are showing up in a way that inspires you? A lot of my friendships, believe it or not, did start through like Instagram. I have friends that I'm now connected with that we've never physically met in person, but because of let's say a social media connection, then we took it to like a Zoom coffee date, which Zoom is like a webinar chat. And there's so much technology out there today that's completely for free that we can connect with people across the globe. There's just no excuse. And if you're looking to create community in like a physical in-person sense and there's not anything around you, guess what, sister or brother? Like, you're the one to create it.
It's funny to me when you say sister, it sounds normal. When you say brother, it sounds
brother.
like a wrestler, like someone from the WWF, like Hulk Hogan when he just says brother.
Yeah, that didn't sound very natural for me either.
Yeah, it was kind of funny to me.
Can you tell I have a women's community? I'll just call you sister too.
Yeah, that's fine for this. It just made me laugh. That's my side tangent for the day. I will not make fun of you anymore. That
no,
was
I
just
like it. I can take
that
it.
Came to me. But yeah, I think that's really important. And as you were talking about, I sidetracked myself with a dumb Hulk Hogan reference.
Oh, but it was so good.
It felt needed at the time. But anyway, one of the things you were saying was we have the ability to connect anywhere. And like, I don't know. I'm going to move past it because I can't freaking remember.
It'll come back.
I'll come back.
Yep.
But anyway, I really do I believe in finding a community because it's something that as someone who my default is introvert and like I always grew up around I don't know, like my dad would joke a lot about how like I hate people. Like I just hate everyone. Like it's just one of those things.
He joked that you hated people?
No, he hated that he did.
He hated. Okay.
And I modeled that.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things that was like, I hate people. I don't want to be around people. I just want to be on my own.
Yeah.
And I very much modeled that.
Yep.
And when you're going through like depression and things like that, and you already really are an introvert, you really do just want to be alone.
Yeah.
Like it's very easy to be like, all this crap's happening over here. I don't care. I'm going to go to my room. Like that was like a horrible habit that I had of when I was in high school. If things were just going down or like we lost a football game, I didn't go out with the team. I didn't do those things. I would literally call Domino's on my way home, order a pizza, pick up the whole thing, go to my room, watch a movie, and go to bed. Like that was my thing.
Like my ideal Friday night, like, right there.
I actually
what's wrong with that?
I loved those nights, but I realized that I was doing that stuff because I had built in my head that like I don't like people. I don't want to hang around people. And I don't like, I was literally friends with everyone. I was only close to like 3 people.
Yeah.
But I was friends with everyone. Everyone knew me. It was just one of those things where the tendency to be afraid of what could happen if I was with everyone and like the desire to just be like, I'm just going to sit over here. It kept me stuck in angry, sad mode.
Yeah.
B, it didn't help me progress to anything.
Right.
At the moment I allowed myself to like stop saying that, like I don't hate people. I've come to find out I really like people. Like I feel like I'm actually okay with people. Like I feel like like I don't know. It's the same with reading. I used to think I hated reading, and then I found personal development and something I was passionate about. Yeah. Like, holy crap! I love reading. Like I didn't know that. Okay,
this is so good because I feel like this just bleeds into a bigger conversation about like we put ourselves in these boxes and then we don't go back to check if what was true for us at one point in our life is still true. That's half of what keeps people limited.
Yes.
And like, especially with making friends, or I love when this is like a love with an eye roll. If you didn't see, that was very subtle. But when women are like, oh, women are catty and competitive, I'm like, who are you hanging around? Like, that's not how women in my circle show up. So who are you being? And are you more committed to holding that belief about how people are, again, eye roll, or are you willing to change the story that you're telling yourself? Because the minute that you do, the minute that you're like, man, there must be, at least entertain, like there must be people out there who are inspiring and motivating and who are willing to just genuinely collaborate. It's not her versus me. Then guess who starts to show up in your life? And the other people who maybe have a different way of operating, it's not like I don't come into contact with women who operate in a way that's not consistent with what works for me. I'm not even going to label it as competitive or catty. It's just not consistent for me. Those people don't get to come into my bubble, my inner bubble, and they just don't really stay around very long. It's like I don't have to like kick anyone out of my life. They just find their way to the door, but the door stays open because I want to live and I'm creating a reality for myself that women do want to collaborate and we want to cheer each other on and we want to see each person step into what they're designed to do. And I'm not meant to do it all. I'm not meant to do all of the events. So I'm going to need women who also want to do events. And I'm not at all threatened by that. But that's not always going to be the case, but it all comes back to, and I love that you really pointed to this, what are those stories we're telling ourselves about us and who we are, what we're capable of, and specifically about other people.
Yeah. I remember the thing that I forgot 5 minutes ago because you kind of went back into your old thing. So I was listening as you're talking about what you're saying to yourself in the mirror, that kind of work. I listened to Jay Shetty has a podcast. Yep. He's very well known. I hadn't listened to his podcast until literally yesterday.
I haven't listened to it
I've heard him on other people's podcasts. But yesterday, Nicole Maiden is another person. She was on a couple episodes back. But she has told me to go listen to this one podcast for the last 4 times she's come in here. And I'll be like, I'll get to it. Finally listened to it yesterday. But a big thing that they were talking about, and it's something that I've talked with, I think, everyone that's been on so far, but like learning to freaking love yourself first. And if you can't love yourself first and you're feeling like this empty, hollow shell of a person and you don't want you want good relationships, but like you're not willing to put any effort in and you're someone who's sad and you're all these different things, that too you're going to attract to you. Yeah. And that was something that he was talking about a little bit about. And anyway, it was just something that I thought a lot about just because it was like, the times in my life where I was the depressed version of myself, who did I attract around me? Other depressed people who were also pissed off. And that was just what it was. And the more I put things out there that are positive, or even if they're tough conversations, in my opinion, they're needed. Yeah. When I put these things out there, I'm attracting people into my life who are either in the same boat as me and 6 months behind me or 6 months ahead of me saying, hey, look out for this kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
But it becomes this helpful community, or it's letting people know, and kind of the way you said, it's an open door. But I'm just really at this point of this is where I stand. If we're not in alignment, dope. I don't care. I don't judge you. I don't I don't care if people judge me. I just don't care. I don't know. I'm reaching this point right now where it's just I would rather just put out, this is exactly who I am. Yep. If you want to be around that, great. Yep. I'm happy for that. If you don't, I am so not offended. I'm so good. And anyway, I was thinking of that as you were talking about you're attracting the person that you're seeing in the mirror. And if you learn to love yourself and see a positive, happy, energetic person who wants to be around people and is capable of loving yourself and loving others, you're going to find some really rad people just come around naturally. It's just going to happen.
It's freaky. They just show up and you're like, where'd you come from? Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Well, and I laugh because that's one of those things where I'm I feel like you're one of those people in my world.
Will show up.
It just pops up because I don't know, that was one thing where as I was helping basically curate the guest list for people we wanted on Skylar's podcast initially, that was me being who do I want to be around? So I was a guy reaching out, so I would reach out to all these different people. Yep. And 2 years later, it's turned into we have such a cool network. We just have all these people who want to do these positive things. Yeah. And I feel I'm with you where I'm I'm not really on board with The Secret, but I do believe you put manifestations and positivity out there, but then you actually work your butt off to move towards them.
That was the part that was missing for me.
That was the part that was missing from The Secret for me. I really do believe in visualizing and putting all this stuff out there. But if you're not, like, I think it's a Jim Carrey quote where he talks about that, where he like wrote himself the check.
Yeah.
And he's like, but if you're going to go eat a sandwich, it's not going to work. And I was like, yeah, that's a nice way to say it.
So true.
So
yeah, I love that.
Anyway, well, I don't know. Yeah, we're going on an hour-ish.
We could probably talk for an ungodly amount of time.
We probably
should give
could.
the people a rest at some point.
We should. I just wanted to check on that. But before I ask my well, I still had other things. Dang it.
We can go there.
No, it's all right.
You can always edit it out.
No, it's all right. We'll just go with this. But before I ask my last question, like, where can people find you?
So I'm not that hard to find. And again, I do all my own social media. I love to use the word we. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, we're doing this. And then it's like actually me and my dog. But I'm on Instagram. I have a personal, just Lindsey Schwarts, 2 L's at the beginning, because there's apparently a lot of Lindsey Schwartzes on Instagram. Powerhouse Women is our company, and that one on Instagram is just Powerhouse_women. And then events and all the things, we're beefing up the website right now to include even the podcast, and that's powerhousewomen.co, and that has all the goods.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say that I genuinely am like so appreciative of like you and your encouragement towards me and all these things, and like it really is just one of those things that I'm like, I know when you're in here, like I will laugh, I will smile. Like it's just, I appreciate the positivity that you really are in the world. And I'm stoked that there are people out there doing things meant towards mindset, but also community. And it makes me excited that like, because I get to be a part of these things, like my daughter will grow up around cool people like you. And like, that's just something that I will always be grateful for. So I just want to acknowledge you for just being awesome and just continuing to just show up as yourself, like regardless of what's going on around. But I appreciate you a lot.
Well, thanks, sister.
For sure. And my last question is, what is something that you do every day that makes you happy?
Ooh, something every day that makes me happy. So this is going to sound so simple, but I choose it. Like I choose happy. Even in the moments where something's pissing me off or someone cuts me off in traffic, I know that I want to return to happy as fast as possible. And that might sound too simplistic, but I always have a choice. I always have a choice to either give my energy to the thing that is not happy or to give energy and consciously pour it into something that does make me happy. So when I really have trouble just choosing it, the other thing I would say is gratitude. You know, really focusing on something I'm grateful for me is like the super highway back from pissed off, which does happen, to the place where I know I'm going to be my most creative, my most confident, and that is when I'm happy. When I'm putting out joy, that's exactly what I'm getting back. And so I would say those 2 things. Yeah.
I have to ask you a question about the last question, though. Just
okay, go for
as
it.
You're talking about the I choose it part, like that, is it something where do you allow yourself like a grace period of like, I'm allowed to be pissed for this much time?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely do. Sometimes I even set a timer.
Nice. Because that was something like I went to a Tony Robbins event a few years ago, and that was something he said. He's like, I choose happiness. Yeah. And he said, basically, no matter what was going on, he gave himself, and whether it was he and his wife fighting or whatever it was, basically, he's like, I'm allowed to be pissed off for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Once that 5 minutes is up, there's not crap I can do about it. I have to move forward now. Yeah. It's already done. I have to move forward. Yep. So I wasn't sure if that was kind of like your way or if you were legitimately just like, nope, it's not happening. I'm just going straight here. Like, I think that short acknowledgement time of like, I'm allowed to be pissed, that really does suck. Yeah. Is important.
I totally agree. And that's, I'm actually glad that you inserted that point, because sometimes it's not as easy as just, oh, like this, or like a family member passed away, I'm just going to choose happy. No. When there is like something real happening in life, the other thing that I do is I allow myself just to feel it, like fully feel the depths of it, whether it's sadness or anger. And then, you know, really from there kind of be like, do I need to feel this more? Or, you know, is this something where I actually do have a choice right now? You know, like I'm just trying to even think of an example, you know, if something happens, or like, let's just say it's even like between husband and wife, like, of course they're like, we bicker, we're normal human beings. We're 2 very different human beings. But like, if something happens and I can like observe myself in the moment, it's like, I can either spend the rest of the night pissed at the person I love most in the world and feeling no closeness, no love, no connection with him. Or right now in this moment, I can choose to love him instead of being pissed. And realizing that I had that choice in any moment. I address things when they need to be addressed for sure, but more often than not, it's something where I kind of pause. It's almost like a timeout on my life, and I'm like, which adventure? Which way do I want to go? Do I want to spend the next hour pissed, or am I going to spend that hour pissed and eventually come back to the point where I'm like, I'm not that mad anyway? Then I'll just like fast forward to that end. Or if it's like, no, this is something that's actually going to bother me, or I really need to address this with a person, then I'll do that in order to get back to my homeostasis, which is happiness and joy and like true just love. That's where I want to operate from as often as possible. So whatever I need to do to get back there, I'll do it. But a lot of times, I'm just talking like the everyday little stuff, I can choose it. And that's the fastest way back there.
That's powerful. I appreciate that.
I'm really smart.
You're so smart.
You're smart for having me on this show.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back sometime so I can run through all the other things that are on my mind at some point.
Part 2 coming soon.
Part 2. We'll put it down the road a little bit so we can get an update on how much your podcast has grown and all those things.
Good.
But I appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
And for everyone else that is listening, make sure you check out our Facebook group. It's called The Good In Today. If you look it up, it's just a bunch of positive news stories that are happening in the world because I believe there's just too much other stuff happening. You can find me on Instagram at thegoodhoff, Hoff, and I appreciate you being here. So if you guys have time, please go and leave a review. It's going to help us as we kind of spread this message and go a lot. So appreciate you guys. Have an awesome day.